You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, Internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Hey, this is John Preston, Marine Combat Veteran and Pacific Records recording artist. Just reaching out to have you check out our new album, Battle Cry, Songs of America's Heroes, an album featuring phenomenal other combat veteran artists like Scott Brown of the Scooter Brown Band, Ryan Weaver, Rowdy Johnson, just an incredible mix of people. This is all veterans telling our stories and our lives, and we're giving 100% of our proceeds to the Valkyrie Initiative to help veterans and first responders integrate back into society. I myself have battled with post-traumatic stress for many years and lost my own brother, a Marine Corps veteran, to suicide. I ask that you step with us and make this happen. We are in pre-order right now and release on March 17th. Go to iTunes, go to Amazon, buy. We plan on making the charts and making it at a very high level, and your support right now makes a difference. This is the release of my new song, Superman Falls, which is actually about the loss of my own brother, which happened last year, and I would love for everyone to check it out, to listen, and hopefully it'll make a difference in many lives.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an urgent message for you. The average funeral today costs over $8,000, but the most you'll get from government benefits is $255. How will your family pay the difference? We can help. Our senior plans start as low as just $1 a day and pay up to $30,000 for a funeral and other final expenses. Peace of mind is easy. There's no medical exam. You'll have lifetime coverage, and your plan can't be canceled as long as you pay your premiums. Call now for free information about our senior plans. Answer a few simple questions and receive approval right on the phone. Plus, call right now and we'll give you a discount prescription card for free. Call 800-553-8687. That's 800-553-8687. Again, 800-553-8687.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it. There to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
Sometimes riders feel lost, unsure why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing into full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, offering manuscript critiques and line edits through a mentoring editorial style. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services, visit blackwolfeditorial.com.
Here's George Foreman with InventHelp.
Hi, I'm George Foreman. Do you have an idea for a new product or invention? People ask me all the time, George, how do I get my idea in front of companies? How do I get a patent? What do I do next? Do you have the same questions? I'll tell you like I'll tell them all. Call my friends at InventHelp.
Call InventHelp today for free information. InventHelp has been helping inventors for more than 30 years and has sales offices nationwide. InventHelp can submit your invention to companies who are interested in receiving new ideas. If you have an idea and want to try to patent it and submit it to companies, you should call InventHelp today for free information.
Listen, I can't guarantee a company will be interested in your idea, but I believe every inventor deserves the opportunity to step into the ring and take their best shot. Put InventHelp in your corner.
To get your free inventor's information, call 1-800-353-6490. That's 1-800-353-6490. Again, 1-800-353-6490.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
Wow, we have had a busy week since the last broadcast. Tomi Lahren, the conservative bomb thrower, host on theBlaze, was suspended earlier last weekend following her comments on The View where she identified as pro-choice. But did Glenn Beck suspend her for having an opinion different than his? I'm going to go much deeper in analysis on Tomi and where things are and are heading with her. On Wednesday in London, there was a terror attack. We'll go over those details and what we know so far and some of the reactions from around the world. We also had Judge Neil Gorsuch facing off with the Congressional firing squad all week with multiple days of questioning from the right and left before the vote to appoint him as in Justice Scalia's vacant seat. We also have details on an elementary school in New Jersey, Jefferson School, where parents are outraged that a mock slave auction was held in the classroom while the teacher was on medical leave. We start there right now on the Generation Y Conservative. Welcome to the Generation Y Conservative Podcast, everyone. I'm so happy that you could be here with me tonight. You can find me on Facebook, which I'm streaming on live right now on Fridays at 9 p.m., just by searching for the Generation Y Conservative. You can also find me on YouTube, where you'll get this podcast a couple days later in the HD version. Just search for the Generation Y Conservative on there. You can also find me on Twitter with the handle @GenYConservative without the E on the end. Now you can also find me on KLRN Internet Radio at 3 p.m. on Sundays as well. If you're also interested in the audio-only podcast, you can now find me on Stitcher, Google Play, and iTunes. I am on as well now. So those are just ways that you can follow along, get involved. I encourage you to share these videos and especially with conservative friends and family members, get the message out there. We need every voice out there that we can get. There's no competition in my world. It's just, the more voices, the better. Every month we spotlight a charity that I believe is worthy cause to either work with or donate to, and this month's is Honor, Courage, Commitment Incorporated. It's an organization that provides support for veterans to start their own businesses down in Texas. And I do realize that there's veterans all over the country that need help, but this was a particular organization that I met at CPAC that I thought was a worthy cause, and if we can help them out anywhere, it's just worth it. In our previous March podcast, I discussed the HCC organization with their 3 pillars of education, mentorship, and community service, as well as their 4 phases of training. Well, tonight I want to spotlight their vision for 2017. The leadership has a bold vision for the future of HCC. They are in the process of moving to a larger facility and creating the first veteran business center in North Texas. This will include office space for existing veteran-owned businesses, making it more affordable by offering space at a lower rate than other Class A or Class B offices throughout a membership model. It also includes shared office space, training facilities for HCC, and the introduction of the first veteran-only business incubator and accelerator. This would also allow HCC to not only assist veterans looking to start a new business, but bring in existing veteran-owned businesses and provide them with the best-in-class services and a path to greater success. Tonight, I am joined by a repeat co-host guest, which is Brant, and I keep on inviting him back because we always have good discussions, and I think he's a good person to have on here. So, welcome, Brant.
Thank you. Thank you.
Back. So we got a couple things that we're going to talk about. The big story of the night that I'll end with is actually talking about Tomi Lahren on the conservative network theBlaze and what's been going on with her. It's a good discussion topic. I think you and I have been discussing it, and there's more and more details every day as far as what's coming out about her and why she was suspended.
Yep.
A lot of people believe it was over her pro-choice comments on The View that she appeared on last Friday, I believe it was.
Might have a little to do with it.
Maybe, yeah. But I from my insider knowledge on what I'm getting from people, not the case.
As I understand it, she was on her way out prior to the interview. So.
And we'll talk about that. Right. Yeah, absolutely. So what we left off with before I got into the podcast itself was that there's an elementary school under fire for auctioning off students in a mock slave trade. So we'll go over some of the details, and then I'll go and banter back and forth here with Brant. But in New Jersey, parents are outraged after elementary school students auctioned off a classmate in a mock slave auction. The 5th grade students, under supervision of a substitute teacher, which is important to know, used creative license while presenting a project on the triangular slave trade, according to a letter sent home to the students' parents by the classroom teacher. NJ.com reported that the teacher returned to the Jefferson School classroom in Maplewood, New Jersey, following a medical absence to view the video of the mock slave auction the students took and decided to proactively issue a letter to the students' parents. The young students are learning about the colonization of the U.S., according to the letter, and she said in it, "I was concerned about the students who viewed and participated in this reenactment and would like to convey this event to you so we can address the students' perceptions as a whole." But Tracy Jermone Woods, a parent of a student at Jefferson School, told WCBS TV that she was worried about the impact the mock slave auction could have on students, especially children who were auctioned. She said there was a sale of a black child by white children in the classroom. If you're demoralized, if you're sold on a block in 2017 in a 5th grade class, it may affect you for the rest of your life. You also had a parent called Mashli Alexandre, I believe is how you say his name. He also told WABC that it is important to know what the intent of the project is, as the intent makes all the difference, which is, I think, where we're going to start that discussion there. Sure. It was also said that this activity was not part of the curriculum, not part of the teacher's assignment, not condoned by the teacher, and not authorized by the district. Now, before I go on and read the rest of the details that are important to this before we start discussing, I did watch the report online in the video that was done by one of these organizations. It was either ABC or CBS. And one thing that was pointed out in this video is that the project itself was left to the students on how to handle this and how to present the slave trade to the classroom. So keep that in mind before we go on any further. Parents expressed their concern about the class project at a Board of Education meeting as well. "We're always in damage control, and it's getting absurd, honestly," board member Philip Celine said at the meeting, according to WCBS. As WABC reported, this was the second incident in just a week when the school district came under fire for how 5th graders handled the subject of slavery, specifically. Parents of students at South Mountain Elementary were dismayed to find out the children created posters advertising slaves. One poster, according to WABC, listed a 12-year-old girl for sale who was described as, quote, "a fine house girl." Another poster said, "Only cash payment is accepted for slaves." So, again, going back over the details there, the one thing that's mentioned in the video that's not mentioned in the text of this article is that this was a student assignment, and they had to come up with ways to present what was happening during the slave trade days on how things were handled, right? So one thing I would point out right off the bat is the students put this on, okay? And are we going to like try to sugarcoat what actually happened? You know?
No.
It seems like these were willing participants in this case.
I agree. And how old were the kids?
5th grade.
All right, 5th grade. Look, I have a hard time with where I fall in this, and it's because I've had two sides of this presented to me by two different people from the black community, and neither one are wrong, and yet you can't really hold both views at the same time. They conflict. And since I haven't been able to hash that out on my own, I don't really have an opinion per se, but on one side you have I think Morgan Freeman said it best. He was asked, "How do you stop racism?" He said, "You stop talking about it." Yep. And a big part of me wants to agree with that. In that, if we don't raise our children to believe, in racism, if we don't stress that even in history classes, that they won't grow up in that, right? They won't.
Isn't that on both sides though too?
Absolutely. But on the other side, you have, take our friend Matt. And Matt will say, well, we should absolutely be teaching things with strict historical accuracy. I don't disagree with that either. I think history is important, and that is a dark history, but it is our history. And how do you do both of those things? You can't. And so I don't really know where I fall on that. I haven't been able to, rectify that in my own mind. What I would say is, for the people And I'm generalizing here that the names based on the ones that I heard were at the very least not Caucasian.
Right.
Okay.
Actually, and in the report, the first one was a mother who's black, and then the other one was of Hispanic descent.
So, and I don't know this. There's no factual basis to this, but let's assume for a moment that they now if they subscribe to the racism will slowly diminish if we don't make it an issue, then I understand their outrage. If they subscribe to historical facts when it comes to American history should be taught without a filter, then obviously then you're saying that a line needs to be drawn, and if so, where, at what age, at what point? Well, yes, the kids put this on. At what point do parents and authority figures step in, and as we should do, and say, there's a line we're crossing here, let's reel it back, or should we? There's a lot of different angles.
Yeah, and that's
to
why
that.
I picked out this topic.
Right. And like I said, on one side I see the outrage, and I can understand the hesitation. On the other side, if we're going to be accurate, that's not inaccurate.
Yes.
I think at that point, maybe a couple of things could have been, if they were going to go that route, and if people decided majoritarily that was okay, I think it would have been important for a teacher to step in and make sure there was a mix of white and black kids being sold. Just
and I looked for those details.
Sure.
I couldn't find anything on how many were put up on the block, so I don't know.
I'm just going based on.
I know
on
that
what
the
was
one
said,
girl was a black
right.
girl.
And so but
I'm sorry, my friend Kira, who I met at CPAC, is on a rampage right now, and I want to respect her, and I think that she has a great point. She said that she has never met a black person in her life. She's like, there are many shades of brown, and that's what she's pushing. It's brown people. So if that's what
and okay, fine. The same can be okay. I'm not white either. If you want to take that route, look, we refer to the black community as black because that's
the term.
To the best of my knowledge, that's
so. I think one thing that you were kind of pointing out here is that on one point you have exactly what you're saying, the Morgan Freeman statement, which is the way to stop racism is to stop talking about it, right? I agree with you. I think people like Matt, our friend Matt, who's a conservative, would disagree with that.
Right.
And he would say that it would move to more of a subtle thing, if not outward.
Right.
That if you stop talking about it, you're refusing to acknowledge that it's existing.
Right.
But on the other hand, what you were saying is what you were basically kind of chewing around the edges.
My struggle.
Well, what it was is the old saying, what is it? I was just thinking about it too. Which is, those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it.
Right.
Right? That's the crux of what your argument was of actually teaching the nasty parts of history. And I would actually point out that it was funny, it was our discussion, is America great?
Right.
Which was a discussion further than the video that I put together.
Right.
But, it's in that context, we have had some horrible parts to our history, but by and large, because of those horrible things that have happened, not that they should have happened, but they have taught us valuable lessons in how to proceed as a nation and move forward and acknowledge those, rectify them, and try to move forward as much as possible.
Right. I guess like I said, we're, at the end of the day, where I stand right now, if Matt made the argument, and he would, that we need to teach true, real history, unadulterated, without a filter, and in its entirety, I don't disagree with him on any level.
Yep.
I don't.
Yep.
And if somebody came along and said that as long as we continue addressing racism, it's going to be a thing, we bring it into existence with our words, I don't disagree with that on any level either. Right. And since they conflict,
Here's the thing, specifically in regards to this story, though. Is it First of all, let's assume some things, okay? Let's assume that the child or children that were involved in being up on the block did so voluntarily, since this was not something that was in the curriculum. Okay, so this was a presentation by the students. I would have to assume, based on that it was a voluntary experience. It could have very well have been not voluntary, but going off of that assumption,
sure.
these children, if they learned that part of history, obviously knew what being up on that block signified.
Sure.
Right? And if the parents are upset that this was a humiliating situation for the children, that they voluntarily, under the assumption, got up on the block for, that is the crux of the historical context of what they're trying to present there.
And I think if the same thing was done at a higher grade level or even in a college setting, it'd probably be praised for the fact that it was designed to initiate a response that,
this is what they would want.
They would want people to feel the discomfort and the humility and everything that came along with having what I can only imagine it would be like to go through that. I think that the fact that they were elementary school kids might have it, inflame this a little bit.
Now, my daughter is in 2nd grade, and she has read, I want to say, over 4 or 5 books now, chapter books, in regards to the Underground Railroad. She has a fascination with that, and we have either already done so or plan on doing a field trip to go around to these types of places where they actually assisted in the Underground Railroad.
And I'm sure they were taught. The other thing, at 5th grade, let's assume, again, it was voluntary on behalf of the kids, and let's assume for a moment that none of the kids felt uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. The fact remains that whatever they chose as their specific subject for this play or whatever they were supposed to put on was a direct response to what they were taught.
Yes.
If they had taught, if they had stressed on the Underground Railroad, kids are very malleable. That would have been about the Underground Railroad if they had stressed about. So I don't know how much you can't blame the kids really at all. I mean,
yeah, I don't think so.
They reenacted what they were taught.
It doesn't seem like anything was forced either.
Yeah.
But and also in the regards to the other incident, which
I like what that one guy said about the intent.
The intent makes all the difference.
It was a really, really good.
Absolutely. And the other incident that happened was that the class, one of the other classes, another 5th grade class, incidentally, was making posters. They look like wanted posters. They would be your posters that you would see up in that typical time era, right? Advertising for slaves. And I thought it was... I saw on the news report the actual footage of what these looked like, and for 5th graders to do them, I thought it was... They did a great, fantastic job. And again, not putting any of these students into the spotlight as on the auction block or anything, disconnecting them from that and actually making posters that are demeaning, demoralizing, portraying people as property, it just looked phenomenal the way these kids did it, because that is what happened at that time, and there should be a certain level of disgust when looking at those things. Look, if the kids were taught in the right, in a way, and if this outlet helped them to understand and in their own way try to show people, right, which is what these things are for, right? They learn something, they want to show people what they've learned. Right.
Is that, that this was a humiliating experience, that this is not okay. And if that's what the whole class walked away with, then great. As it applies to the outrage, obviously this will probably become viral. And I think the one thing I haven't heard mentioned, and I think whether it's important or not, will become a huge talking point. This was done by a substitute teacher. Was the substitute teacher Caucasian, or was the substitute teacher black? They didn't mention. I can imagine if this was a Caucasian teacher, especially for the middle or upper class that came in and did this, that doesn't make...
It would gauge the outrage.
It would definitely put gas on a fire.
Yeah.
I think that's something worth, knowing.
Yeah, it wasn't mentioned in this case. Okay, so we'll move on from there. We also had Shia Labeouf. Is that Labeouf?
Shia Labeouf, yeah. Shia.
Yeah. Who?
The guy from Holes.
Yeah, okay, so you would know him from that. I actually know him from that movie. Well, I mean, he's in multiple movies. It was in Transformers. Yeah. My favorite one that he was in, though, was Disturbia.
Yeah.
Great movie. Check that one out if you get the chance.
Holes, not so much.
Yeah. So... If you're not familiar with this has actually been making the news for quite some time. He actually installed what he considers an art project. You know what I'm talking about?
This is my favorite thing that has happened in, ever.
Oh, did you? And I have
4chan?
Crazy.
2chan and 4chan are the ones that are responsible for...
Moving it?
For trolling it, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They trolled it to Europe.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so you are up to date on it.
Oh, yeah.
So, this is an anti-Trump art exhibit that has been forced out of America. And what originally happened was it was basically almost like a security camera. It was like the black bubble cameras that you see hanging up and everything. It was on the outside of the wall of the museum, and above it was, "He will not divide us."
The white flag, it just says, "He will not divide us." That is his art.
Yes, and what you were encouraged to do as an anti-Trump person is walk up to the camera and repeat that line. "He will not divide us." And Shia stood in front of the camera. "He will not divide us."
Yeah,
he will not divide.
Well, in the face of a guy.
Oh yeah. Well, and that guy did turn out to be a white supremacist.
Oh really?
At first I thought, okay, are they just calling him a white supremacist because he didn't agree with this and was trying to get his own message?
But no, he really was.
He really was, and he's a well-known one apparently. Who I wouldn't know. Whatever.
So there's that.
But,
okay.
But yeah, he did get in that kid's face, and they were basically chest butting each other. Trying to get in front of the camera, and Shia was just going. I mean, that guy is psycho sometimes. You know what I mean?
You remember the paper bag you wore?
That's
all
not
part
of this
anymore?
art project.
Yeah.
And I forget who Fact is called. Something I'm not sure. The group that he works with. Yes, it's the Foundation for Art and Creative Technology. No, I'm sorry. Okay. Co-creators Ronco and Turner. So they were responsible for that "I'm not famous anymore" paper bag on the face. Mm-hmm. And people were encouraged to go into a room with him, and he just stood there.
Right.
That was that art project.
Yep.
Then there was another one where fans were encouraged to go to a movie theater and watch all of his movies in consecutive order with him all day long.
Well,
his movies, right?
Right.
So... But in this case,
they had to buy tickets there.
I don't know. Who knows? I mean, that's kind of disturbing to me. Right. But the installation that we're talking about here was originally conceived as a 4-year-long New York-based protest against Donald Trump to run the length of his presidency. But because of the contentious counter-protests, the project had to be shifted from New York to New Mexico, and eventually to a new country altogether. The project began at the Museum of the Moving Image on January 20th, Inauguration Day, and visitors were invited to deliver the words "He will not divide us" into a live stream camera mounted on a wall outside the museum, with Shia himself leading the chant for long periods of time. Now here's where this article, which I believe came from the Daily Mail, gets a little offhand because I have some other details from a different story that I want to bring up too. It says, however, the installation was also subjected to constant disruption and hate speech by far-right extremists and a lack of institutional support. And that's what the team had said in a statement. It relocated for a time to Albuquerque, but due to disruption by neo-Nazis and after gunshots were fired in the vicinity, although unrelated to the project, so why even talk about it, the artists were forced to move it once again.
Well, so, if I may,
are you going to give the details on how that installation was found?
The second, yes, and that's the real reason it was moved, because it was replaced with a "Make America Great" hat and an alt-right T-shirt.
Yeah.
So,
which Pedro the Fraud.
Yeah,
I have no history on that.
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah, I'm familiar with the.
Well, please tell me, because me and other people.
I looked it up after I read the article.
Okay.
You'd have to do the same. But yeah. So he took it to private property. Yes. Is what he did in an attempt to keep this thing so he could stream it live.
Yes.
And so the hackers, he calls himself 2chan, I think it is, decided he was going to find this thing. So the first thing they did was
was amazing.
Yeah. The first thing they did was they started looking at planes that were flying over, waited until they crossed.
Traffic behavior.
Waited until they crossed, and then started
looking online at the
traffic to see where those points were. Then they waited till it got dark, and they went old school with the astronomical the stars,
the constellations.
Then he posted a post that he was at some diner in Tennessee, and so then they had a guy go out around that diner honking his horn, till they could hear it on camera. When they finally found it, they pulled the flag down and they replaced it with an alt-right shirt and a "Make America Great Again" hat.
Imagine for a second the amount of effort that just went into trolling Shia.
They did this all in 2 days.
Yes, I mean this is amazing. This is
imagine if they
this is using old school tactics of the CIA.
Yeah.
Okay. First, they monitor the air traffic patterns of the planes in the area while also looking at air traffic patterns on a United States map.
And they also noted that the when they
sunset.
When they decided they knew kind of where it was, they tried to match the sunset in the live stream to the sunset at the Tennessee place where he was to see if that really was.
You can tell the time of day, and then you could narrow down the time zone, so you can actually do a portion of that in America, then narrow it down by the constellations, by the air traffic patterns, and then the final step was beeping the horn trying to find it.
It was absolutely amazing.
That's crazy. Right, so now they've moved it to... moved it to where?
They moved it to Europe.
Europe, yeah.
But they put it on the roof of a building.
Yeah.
So
where they think it's not going to be trolled down.
Well, actually, the very next...
After what these people went through?
Well, actually, the very next day, was it about a week ago? 2chan has already released the building plans for the building that it's on, including the roof. And he has already committed to getting this flag down. I don't know if he's done it yet. No, I do know. They did. They did, because what happened was they were in the process of about to get it, and the feed cut. Labeouf or whoever, before they could show it, he was trying to steer the thunder. But then the guy comes on with the flag later on and confirms it after the fact on his own feed. So that's done.
So it says even when it was moved to an unknown location, white supremacists managed to find, deface, and steal it, as well as setting a nearby field on fire. I
didn't hear that.
Yeah. I think that they just wanted to blame something else on them that was a criminal act so that they could get them for it.
Sure.
It says events have shown that America is simply not safe enough for this artwork to exist, the artist said. In its current form, a white flag bearing the project's title, Flying at Fact, will be live streamed at hewillnotdivide.us for the next 4 years.
I mean, I think the only thing that could have been done questionably here, well, two things would be stealing private property.
It is,
okay.
Yeah.
And then in one case, two cases, trespassing on private property.
Right.
Okay, yeah, I get it. But dangerous, violent? No. Just...
Well, that's the tactic.
I mean, liberals control the Republicans the same way, and you still have to admire it.
Yeah, you do. I mean, this is crazy.
It was fantastic.
But I was going to say, this is the tactic of the left is, no matter what happens, if they disagree with it, it's automatically white supremacists, bigots, homophobes.
Sure.
And it's their go-to thing. And once again, I would say that is the reason why someone like Trump has had such success in the political field. People are just sick of automatically being jumped to as that is why you're talking the way you are, why you support what you do. No, it has a lot to do with our employment situation, the value of the dollar here in America, how we're able to or not able to in a lot of cases support our families anymore, the fact that we work our butts off all week long to pull together scraps, and in the meantime illegals come here and get everything for free, and in a lot of cases actually live better than some of the poorest in our country that work 2 or 3 jobs to get by. And then those people complain about their situation because of liberal progressive policies that are in place that control everybody into these groups and into these situations, and they're automatically labeled as bigots and homophobes and everything else when they don't even say anything about that.
Right.
I mean, it just gets to be ridiculous. So, Shia and his stupid little art project, I'm glad that it was hacked in real life or whatever you want to say. It's just to troll him. Which I have been an advocate in the past. That's a little hypocritical of me saying that, because I'm one of the people that says whether you're on the right or the left, if you say something online with these internet trolls that come out of nowhere and try to get you, fired from your job or anything else, it's wrong on both sides of the aisle, and it's been happening a lot over the past couple of years. But this is just out of lighthearted fun. No one's getting hurt in this.
Well, and look. I'm not condoning it. What the hackers did. I'm not. I'm saying that for entertainment value and for the sheer amount of effort and everything that went into the whole project, reading this story, it's hilarious.
Yeah, it is.
It's not right.
It really is.
I wouldn't be the one to do it. Yes, they broke some laws. Yes, they deserve to be punished for breaking those laws.
Can you imagine?
But it's so entertaining.
The fans of 4chan or 2chan.
I saw both. I don't know if it's two different people or.
Like their fan base and them and their team
must be losing their mind.
Well, they must have been all working together in like a chat room or a forum or something like that, where they're like just throwing ideas back and forth on all these different ways of locating that stuff. Yep. I would have loved to have just in real time witnessed those conversations.
Just be a fly on the wall. Yeah,
it would have been crazy. Okay, moving on. We have the terrorist attack in London that happened on Wednesday. And London police name the Parliament attacker as British-born Khalid Masood.
I thought he was right. I thought he was Asian.
Oh,
no,
it's
what the media said until they showed the picture.
Yeah, exactly. He's age 52, or was age 52. Booyah. London police have released the name of the man who killed 3 people and injured 40 before he was shot to death in a suspected lone wolf terror attack on the House of Parliament. One of those killed was an American who was visiting with his wife on their 25th wedding anniversary, which just
sucks.
I heard that on the radio yesterday or today, and it was a mix of just being so emotional and outraged at the same time of like, that is horrible.
I didn't know there was an American involved in the attack until, Trump tweeted it.
Yeah, she was seriously injured.
Yeah.
Khalid Masood, 52, and will stay at 52, and 6 feet under, was born in Kent in 1964 and was believed to have most recently lived in the Midlands. The Metropolitan Police said in a statement on Thursday. Police said that his first conviction was in November 1983 for criminal damage, and his last was in December 2003 for possession of a knife. So there is a history there. It's a little spread out. 1983 is the year that we were born.
I also read that the British intelligence had investigated him.
Yes.
I don't know how long ago, but as a potential terrorist.
Not mentioned in this news story, but there are videos of him saying radical things online.
Mm.
So they were able to identify him pretty quickly in those as well. Let's see.
But we don't want to arrest him for that stuff.
Yeah, no, you don't want to keep an eye on people.
Then we're bigots.
Yep. I mean, first of all, okay, so let's talk about the UK, and they're dealing with the refugee crisis and the Islamic population. Let's forget about the refugee crisis, because that was more recently. Actually, for the last decade or so, we've seen an influx of immigration to the UK as well as other countries. One thing that happens in the UK, and people aren't familiar with this, especially in our country, is that just like in the U.S. here, where Dearborn, Michigan is almost entirely Muslim
They're setting up Sharia towns.
Yes, exactly. And in the UK, these are Sharia-controlled towns. And under Sharia law, which is an Islamic law, there's a lot of really effed up things. I mean, that's all there is to say about that. In the case of a woman that's raped, you have to have 4 male witnesses, to acknowledge that, yes, in fact, you were raped in order to have a case.
If you're gay, they throw you off a building.
If you're gay, they stone you, right? Women aren't allowed to drive. They have to walk, I believe, 2 feet behind their husband in public.
I've spent some time in these places.
Yeah, exactly. That's
how it actually is there.
Yeah. Yeah. They are not allowed out in public by themselves, right? It's just a barbaric law. Or set of laws, I guess you could say. But in the UK, what you have is these parts of Britain and other parts in the UK where if a police is chasing an Islamic individual and they enter into a town that is controlled by Islamic law, we've actually gotten to the point in Britain already where the cop will stop, turn around, and leave because they are guided by Sharia law. Their law, the UK's law, does not supersede Sharia law. That's ridiculous. And there's actually cases of them trying to do that here trying to get Sharia law to
Well, they're not trying. Their Sharia law, as they define it, is the law that comes to them from Allah. And because it's their religious law, it trumps all.
Right.
Period.
But there, legally, it stands.
Oh, sure.
Here, legally, it doesn't.
But in their minds, they're willing to break the law because they're not willing on any level to break Sharia law, right, and if it conflicts with state, federal, local laws. So
here, I mean, we have honor killings too as part of that, which is one of the most. It breaks your heart. I mean, you're talking about if a man, an Islamic man's daughter, let's say, a 12-year-old daughter is raped,
mm-hmm,
she has brought shame to the family, and the father can kill her.
Yep.
And it often happens.
I mean, it's ridiculous, but I mean, it's seen in other cultures. I mean, that's one of those things where, now, I don't think it's still a thing, but I mean, you see that.
It's happened here in the U.S.
No, but I'm talking about even outside of Muslims. You had that historically in Japanese culture. Well, actually, the only other one I know, but they did have that in Japanese culture,
okay,
where if you brought dishonor to your family, that you were expected to end your life, or it was going to be ended for you.
Is that the
right? You were given that option. Most people, I would assume, didn't take it,
no, yeah,
and you were killed by family.
But
I think it's considered so archaic, and
oh yeah,
and the fact that they're still advocating it for it, like it's.
And I would have to look into it further on the Japanese portion because I haven't done the research on that. But I would imagine that looking at the heritage of the Japanese, that would be more in line and akin to like truly dishonoring your family.
Well, and that's you're right.
And not like a kid gets raped and because she's been.
I don't like that we call what the Muslims do honor killings because I don't think
Islamic.
Islamic, sorry. Yeah. Honor killings because it really isn't about honor. Just like most of their laws are not what they say they're about. They're about control.
Yeah,
they're about control of the female population, and that's it. Period. And most of Sharia law is to keep women suppressed. It's got nothing to do with honor.
Yeah, absolutely, you're right. Let's see. Okay, so here's some more details on this. Earlier, the British police had searched 6 addresses and made 8 arrests in raids as part of an investigation into Wednesday's attack, which left 4 people dead. Which I think the 4th was Masood himself. Masood plowed his car into pedestrians on London's Westminster Bridge and then fatally stabbed a police officer before being shot to death. Police had said 5 died, but then they revised it to 4 overnight. So let's go back, because this is briefly mentioned. The police searched 6 addresses and made 8 arrests in raids as part of this investigation. So there's obviously still more stuff going on here.
Sure.
More details are yet to be released on that. Let's see here. Prime Minister Theresa May gave details of the casualties' nationalities on top of the 12 injured Britons. 1 American, 3 French children, 2 Romanians, 4 South Koreans, 1 German, 1 Pole, 1 Irish, 1 Chinese, 1 Italian, and 2 Greeks. So, certainly a lot of diversity in there as well as far as the victims are concerned. It says, an official from the Mormon Church in Utah identified the slain American as Kurt W. Cochran, who was on a wedding anniversary trip to London with his wife Melissa, and she was seriously wounded, according to the Associated Press. So she is still alive in serious condition. I don't know if there's been an update to that since then, but certainly disturbing.
No. Not that I know.
Right. Later Thursday, the Islamic State group said through its, AMAC news agency that the attacker was a soldier of the Islamic State who, quote, carried out the operation in response to calls for targeting citizens of the coalition of countries fighting is in Syria and Iraq. So these are places that these people are coming from, the Islamic States, right? The attack is the worst London has seen since July 7th of 2005, when the capital was hit by a series of suicide bomb attacks on public transport during rush hour. It says that the city has been on severe alert since 2014, which indicates that an attack is highly likely in response to conflicts in Iraq and Syria, And this was an increase from a previous level of substantial, which implies a strong possibility of an attack. So do you have anything else to say in regards to this kind of stuff at all?
I think that there is a, not just in Britain, in the U.S., there's a kind of a troubling trend of, well, we investigated that, we investigated this guy, we thought he was a terrorist, and yet somehow they're still able to slip through the cracks and follow through with acts of terrorism that kill people. Something to me says that we can do better in some way, shape, or form.
I think that the president's first step would be revising immigration.
Right? Yeah, imagine that. Yeah. And as far as the rainbow of people that were affected here, I think it's important that they are not against whites or blacks or Asians. They're against anyone from Western culture that does not subscribe to Islam.
Yep.
Period. They just want to kill Americans and Europeans.
Do you have anything else to say on your history in the Army in regards to some of the things that you've come across, like in situations like
in
this?
Afghanistan?
Yeah, I mean, there was a little.
Pretty much everything's. It's been more than 12 years. Pretty much everything's declassified that I did. So, I mean.
Well, in regards to there was a. It was a couple of months ago now. There was this kind of Blackwater guy or something like that.
Blackwater.
He was. I don't know if he was specifically. Yeah, he was a subcontractor. He had a big beard. He was in Afghanistan, I believe, and he went into a rant about how he talked to one of the.
Oh, and they had to take him out. That was Iraq.
Yeah, Iraq. Yeah. And he talked to one of the security people that was in Iraq, and he said, if I were, as an American, to just go without security and walk into town, what would happen to me?
You'd be killed.
And that's what he said.
And not by extremists, by the local population.
Yeah.
The nature... Look, this is a tricky thing. Are they bad people? Huh. No. Right? They subscribe to a way of life that tells them that they must behave in that way. That if you will not subscribe to what they subscribe to, that there is not just that they can, that they should, but that they have a responsibility to kill you. And that if they don't act on that responsibility, that they're going to go to their version of hell. It's so deeply ingrained.
Have you studied?
I read the Quran. I've spent a lot of time with it.
Is the term abdication? It's the term that relates to. Often Muslims will point out that in the beginning of the Quran, Muhammad is very peaceful, loving, and everything else, and that these are truly the words of Muhammad and what the Muslims try to follow. But there's a word, and I believe it's called abdication.
What you're referring to is there is a... You're right.
Whatever he says later supersedes what was said previously.
As I understand it, and I read an English translation that I got from an interpreter of the Quran, so there's probably a lot of misinterpretations, but as I understand it, this was all written by one guy, right? By Muhammad, and, naturally when he was young, he was pretty liberal guy. Of course, as he got older, he became a little more bitter and militant, and such is the way that people.
Trader, right? His family of fur traders.
Yes, and so because of that, because this was written over the whole lifetime of this man, there are contradictions from his early life into his later life. And what you're referring to is there is a specific. They do address it. It's not ignored. And what it says is that in the event of a contradiction in the Quran, whichever statement was made most recently is the one that you are to follow. Which pretty much means if you are a devout Muslim, I mean, if you are every word, right? You can pretty much ignore the whole first half of that book. And go directly to the hate and the killing and the military and jihad and everything else. So...
Well, let's talk about that for a second and compare it to Christianity, because a lot of people that are atheists or so would argue the fact that there's a lot of things that were done in the Old Testament.
Correct.
But there was that age of reform.
Well,
right? There's a reform between the Old Testament and New Testament that Christ shed his blood for our sins.
Right. In other words,
which is the biggest difference. Real quick, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but actually, you're interrupting me. But but in the case of Christianity, what you have is that it's a religion. It's the only religion where the sacrifices that are made are not by the people to their God, but God sacrificed himself for the people. It's the only religion in which case that happens.
I know that's the truth for Christianity. I don't know that that's not the truth for any other religion. I've never looked into that. What I will say is, when it comes to, if you're going to compare Christianity and Islam, take the Bible. If you want to see what Islam looks like, put it in the mirror. Okay? And I don't mean that in a hateful way, or that, somehow one is more. What I mean is, in the Quran, you have peace that turns into anger and ends with anger. Anger is the end.
That's what you're saying. Okay.
When you look at the Bible, you have you have sacrifice, you have anger, you have wrath in the beginning.
Yep.
Which then becomes, and is replaced essentially by New Testament law that says, okay, God died, you don't have to do any of that stuff anymore. Now all I need you to do is love God and love people unconditionally. And so, the opposite, right, and so it is almost the exact opposite of Christianity in that respect.
I want to kind of go off into a little bit of a Christianity discussion. I don't claim to be a scholar of it by any means, and there's certainly a lot I learn all the time by listening to people like the pastor I listen to, besides my own, Matt Chandler down in Texas and everything. I learned from with his sermons, but quickly before I get into that discussion, and keep that in mind in regards to sacrifices and God's wrath. Okay, sure. So keep that in mind because I'll probably forget. What I always find interesting in the historical context is that Thomas Jefferson ran into the Barbary pirates, and actually brought the Quran back to the United States because he read it himself and saw how just radically it was how radical it is. And it was actually Congress that took that and reprinted it and sent it out in mass into the schools to distribute as a distribution system directly from Congress. I mean, think about the times that have changed, where a religious text was actually, and the Bible was done the same way. It was actually printed by Congress and passed out through schools and everything. But in this case here with Thomas Jefferson, what he did was he released this to the public as a means of learning historically what we're dealing with. He knew at some point that these two religious things were going to collide, right? Mm-hmm. And knew that there was going to be something in the future. I'm actually surprised, with that ideology being around for so long, that it took this long from Thomas Jefferson's days for the bulk of the crap storm to hit us in historical context.
Transportation had a big deal to do with that.
Yeah, I mean, I was just talking in last week's podcast, I believe, that we declared independence on July 4th, but it wasn't for another 60 days or so until England found out, because they had to receive the letter by ship.
Right. Yeah.
So we were celebrating like crazy, and under their assumption, we were still part of the system, Yeah.
I mean, the religion, Christianity versus Islam, are so exact opposite in so many. I mean, there is
crossover.
There is crossover, and a lot of
because Jesus is a prophet.
They actually believe in Jesus.
Yeah,
they just don't believe he's the Son of God.
Exactly.
But I mean, with that mirror image, I mean, never is a better hero anti-hero metaphor been personified. But I think the biggest difference between the Bible and the Quran, hands down, is that if you talk to a Christian, they will tell you that while the Bible was written by men, multiple men, that it was God speaking through those men, and that it is not even just inspiration, literally speaking through, and that the words that were printed were God's word. Yep. The Islam, that is not correct. They believe in God, but they believe that Muhammad was his prophet, not his son. But they do believe that Muhammad, as a man and as God's prophet, wrote that as a man, not as the word of Allah, but just it was written by a man. And so I think that's the biggest difference
you're
between
right.
the two books.
Yeah.
One is meant to be omnipotent, and the other is written by
a
very flawed individual.
ADD kind of conversation off to the side.
You got the right guy.
Completely unrelated.
You got the right
to this,
guy.
Right? Is that when I run into skeptics of Christianity, right?
Sure.
Typically, one of the biggest responses that I get, and it's been from my own family, to be honest with you, this is why I think about this a lot, is that they believe that there's a very conflicting ideology or belief in God, because in one case you have this wrathful vengeance angle to God, and then in the other you have these people preaching the love and care of Jesus and everything as well.
Sure.
And they say, how do you mix those two and keep those two as the same God? But at the same instance, you also have, it's almost three factions. You have the people that are confused as to why you can have those two diametrically opposed viewpoints coming together in one God. But then you also have the people that only believe in the wrathful God, right? That follow that part of Christianity. And then only the people that believe that, which is, I think, where a lot of today's social issues come from, is the people that believe that Jesus and God is all loving, and as long as you are praising Him, you can do whatever you want. So this is the types of churches that condone same-sex marriage and stuff like that ignore certain sins and say that Jesus is a loving person. Would He condone what I'm doing because of a loving relationship and loving Him and praising Him and everything, as well as just other sins? They kind of overlook those because they say, well, Jesus died for our sins, so we can do this.
God created us, but He created us in His image. Now, and that
opens another trap door, though.
Sure. But my point is, look, they're saying He can either be loving or He can get angry, but He can't be both.
Right.
Why?
They haven't been fathers, apparently.
That's exactly where I was going. It's like, do you love your children?
Yeah.
Do you get angry with them?
Absolutely.
Do you yell occasionally when they push you to the edge? Of course you do. And so, look,
it's a teaching thing. It's
right.
It's course correcting their behavior out of love for them.
Well, my point
is what he does.
Your anger doesn't negate your love for them, and it doesn't diminish it. I don't actually hear that argument much. The argument I hear more often is as a result of the church, and I will place blame on the church.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a difference between religion and Christianity.
Well, look, you get it a lot from the gay community, right? Well, you're condemning, you're condemning us. You think we're sinners. Yeah, but
we're all sinners.
We're all sinners.
Yeah.
I don't think you're more of a sinner than me.
Well, sin is sin in God's eyes.
Well, that's my point, with the exception of sexual sin, which that's the only thing that he does make mention of. But the bottom line is, he did say it is not our job to judge. And all that means is that you don't have to align yourself with another person's values, views, morals, or anything else to show them compassion like you're supposed to and show them unconditional love. And so if they walk into a church and they feel rebuked and they are immediately rushed with people who want to fix them, right? Not our job. We don't fix people. God does.
It's not.
I get it. I get where that viewpoint, and it's not their fault. No. It's the church's fault.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of churches really need to get back to the actual word and really practice what they preach and make sure that their congregations understand how to do that.
Isn't that a funny thing, too? Because to go off of what you just said there, I'm currently dealing with the situation. I probably shouldn't say this because it'll get me in trouble. But let me give an example.
Sure.
Okay. There are groups of people out there that protest outside of Planned Parenthood and other abortion clinics by holding up signs of aborted fetuses or babies and the gruesome, basically pictures of what happens. And that's not untrue. That is a picture of what happens, right?
Sure.
They stand out there, they condemn the actions of these people, they yell in their faces, they scream at them and everything else out of the hopes that somehow these people turn around and realize the faults in their actions based on these pictures and everything. But my argument to those types of people would be, and I just discussed this with my pastor last weekend, I believe, is that Jesus and the woman at the well, who happened to be a prostitute, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did he go there with a sign, knowing that she was there, with images or drawings of what STDs look like and everything?
You're right.
That and they'll say to you that Jesus wants them to turn their lives around and not. Well, that's not how Jesus would have acted.
Well, you're absolutely right, and Jesus told us to go out and make disciples, but we're meant to model his behavior, and that's what he gave us. He gave us a model. Right, he gave us an instruction manual,
yeah.
and he modeled the behavior for us, and you're absolutely right. And what those people out there with those signs are doing, especially when someone tries walking in, is they're casting the first stone.
Yes.
Look,
they happen to love the babies more than their neighbors, when it should be an equal.
Right, and if you are actually going to be a Christian, if you are actually going to conduct yourself in a Christian way, then the appropriate way to go about things would be to show unimaginable compassion to that person.
Yep.
Not just when they're walking in, not just when they made a decision you wanted them to make, but when they're walking out. They probably need it more.
Yes.
And so, look, we're not meant to judge. We are literally meant to show compassion to all God's children. The way I look at things, and I know there's not everybody's out there is a Christian, so maybe this is but as I look at it in my life, God is my Father. God created it all. We are all God's children. That makes every person on this planet my brother, my sister.
Yep.
And I have my brother, right? If my brother did something illegal, killed somebody, apprehensible, spent life in prison, would I accept those actions as okay? No, not at all.
Well,
would I still love him?
Yeah, exactly.
I absolutely would. Would I still show him every kindness? He's my brother. He's my family. I absolutely would. And that's the way we're meant to treat everybody. And I think that's, if we want the view of Christianity from the outside looking in to change, then we need to be doing what we're supposed to be doing, which is mirroring the behavior that we want to see in the world. And I would say it's a very small.
It's the hardest thing when you're talking about same-sex marriage or same-sex relationships and what it means to Christianity, because if you try to compare that angle to a different angle just to show how you're supposed to react in a situation. So, for example, if I were to say, just because I don't agree with your lifestyle or you disagree with my lifestyle, for instance, like if there's someone that I know that's actively cheating on their wife or their husband, and they happen to be a family member or a close friend of mine, would I love them any less? No. But would I be very disappointed in them? Would I say I don't agree with what you're doing? Yeah, exactly. But then to say that, then that's to the LGBTQ community or anyone that supports that, they would say, well, you're comparing a bad action to love, right? But that's not the point. The point is you're trying to say whatever it is you disagree with, you can still love a person, right? That's just like...
Look, take your example of the woman at the well. God did not come up to her, to the best of my knowledge. I'm not real familiar with the story, only generally, but I don't believe he came up to her and said, what you're doing is wrong.
No, he said she was going there for a drink of water during the day, during the highest point of the day because of how hot it was. Other people don't go there. And he said, if you drink from my water, basically, you'll never have to drink again or whatever, which he meant the word.
Right. But look, we are not supposed to judge, okay? The sins of a man or a woman are between them and God, okay? The best that we are supposed to do is mirror the behavior.
Yep.
That is it. Mirror that behavior. And you know what? Every once in a while, somebody might look at you and say, you know what? You seem content. You seem happy, even though your life is hard. What is it about that? And that's
up a hell of a conversation.
Well, no, but now they're asking you a question. They're asking for an answer, and you can give them one. And maybe they take that answer and they do something with it, or they don't. But we are not meant to go out and demonize people.
No.
Regardless of their actions. We are meant to show compassion. Period. I mean, I fall short. I know everybody else does too. But I think it's important to keep that at the forefront of your mind as the way that you're supposed to behave.
Absolutely. I'm sorry for that little offshoot, but I think it leads into interesting conversations now and then. You all right?
Oh, I'm good.
Okay. So one of the big things that was happening this week was the Gorsuch's Supreme Court hearings. Gorsuch is the judge that President Trump picked out to replace Antonin Scalia, one of the lions of the Supreme Court that followed the Constitution. What is that called? Originalism, right? Mm-hmm. So that is actually brought up in here.
Is that a new term? Or is that...
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, I guess it would... There has to be a certain timeline where, a line in the sand where it's like, okay, that's the past, and that's what we still follow.
But that's throwing this word originalist out. I've only ever heard that now in these proceedings.
Right. I
don't know if there's any precedent for that.
Okay, so this whole week has been, I think on Monday or Tuesday it started with the hearings, which was just opening statements from the senators as well as an opening statement from Gorsuch himself.
Which made my entire week.
Okay, do you want to say anything about that? Because I don't mention any of that in here.
Oh, no, just... I heard one response from Gorsuch.
Go ahead.
The one I told you about.
Yep, go ahead.
Where, they're basically talking about, is the Constitution a living document? Is it, is it set in stone? Does the fact that it was written, as long ago as it was, make it still applicable today, and so forth and so on, and the laws are open for interpretation. And he just kind of sat there silently, and when they gave him an opportunity to speak, he just kind of looked at him and goes, Democrats, if you don't like the fact that I make my decisions based on the law, make better laws. And just kind of shut the conversation down for a moment. And I just thought that was pretty fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there was a lot of implication in what he said there, too, was that, regardless of what party I sit on, I am going to make my decisions based on the law at hand. And if those laws change, I will enforce those laws. And if you pass laws I don't like, I will enforce those laws, and my decisions will be based on those laws. He is basically saying, listen, I'm going to uphold the law. That's, the oath I took, and you don't like it, change the law.
Yeah, and I think what you'll find in what I'm about to go over here, which is I found this article, 7 highlights from his hearing, is that the Democrats ended up really reaching for things to talk about with him and hit him on, because this is unlike someone like Roberts, let's say, when he was appointed to the court. Gorsuch has over 3,000 opinions.
I have no idea.
As a judge,
I haven't seen
that they can look back on to see his history of being a judge. Right? Roberts didn't have much at all, but it actually opens this opportunity where he is just. I believe it was 10 years ago or so that he was appointed to something by someone and had to go through similar hearings, and the Democrats voted him through because he's such a great judge, right? So now they're in a predicament where they are trying to turn their decisions around and against him based purely on the fact out of revenge and spitefulness that, what was his name? Who was Garland? Mm-hmm. Which was Obama's appointment, or tried to be his appointment onto the court, was not pushed through by the Republicans. And we can talk about that a little bit more when we get to that, because it is mentioned later. But it's a response to that action right now, where they're trying to search for anything. And you'll find here, when I go over some of these topics, is that they go to specific cases that are just, in my mind, ridiculous to bring up in this hearing, to try and hit him with something. And there's some great responses. There's some jokes that were thrown around by like Senator Sass and everything.
Well, they're in a panic.
Sass. They absolutely are in a panic.
They're grasping at straws.
Yeah. So, highlight number 1 was in response to overturning Roe v. Wade, which was we tie right in from our last conversation. Gorsuch repeatedly refused to answer whether he would look to overturn the Supreme Court's 1973 Roe v. Wade decision granting abortion rights. Instead, the Supreme Court nominee noted that the High Court's decision has been repeatedly reaffirmed. Roe v. Wade is a precedent of the United States Supreme Court, Gorsuch said, when asked on Tuesday about whether the High Court correctly adjudicated the case. It has been reaffirmed. Senator Dianne Feinstein said to him that the case has been reaffirmed many times, And when asked again on Wednesday, Gorsuch said that it's the law of the land. So let's talk about that for a little bit, though, because what I find interesting...
Sorry.
Roe v. Wade?
Yeah, well, he said law of the land, and that is literally the part of the definition of the Constitution of the United States. So was he implying that it's in the Constitution?
No. I think he's implying that it's a passed law and he has
Sure.
to abide by it and everything. But what I find interesting about this is that... Now I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
Well, number one, Roe v. Wade, who argued for abortion rights, is now a staunch pro-life advocate and deeply regrets the fact that she ever pushed this. Oh, yes. Okay, so here's what I want to talk about. Yes, I constantly wonder what the right approach to Roe v. Wade is. Because you set a precedent if you overturn it, right? In that anything can be overturned at that point, right? And that's true. But what I think is, what's more important? Is it changing law or changing hearts and minds?
Well,
of the public, right? Because I would argue that more important than overturning this law is overturning the hearts and minds of people so that they never look to this law to defend their actions, right? In school, we look at situations where abortion is taught as a means of birth control. Okay, you have the opportunity to correct a mistake that you made, is what they try to say. Well, the pro-choice of choice comes in the act of choosing whether or not to have sex, in my mind, right? And if we can educate properly, which I don't think that we are in schools today, and give the repercussions of what abortion does to not only the human life of the baby itself, but also the repercussions of the mental state of mothers afterwards. I find that the most staunch pro-life advocates I've ever run into are people that have had abortions and realize the damage that has done long-term mentally to their mental health. People like someone I had a relationship basically with in college who constantly thinks, where would this kid be today? Would I have a daughter? Would I have a son? What would they be like? How would I be as a mother at that point and everything? I mean, that was a discussion back in college, for crying out loud, of the devastation that she was going through. And, it's things like that, we could be teaching the effects of abortion as well as the other choices that you can make, which is adoption, giving up for adoption and everything. And I have... my own thoughts on that, but go ahead.
Well, I think that this was a much easier subject in past decades because Christianity was still considered to be the foundational religion, and not that it demonized people, based on the Christian, but even if you take Christianity down to its bare bones as a lifestyle, it's you're going to learn some good out of it,
Yeah.
And as far as my personal views on the matter, I mean, I am pro-choice all the way.
Pro-life or pro-choice?
Pro-life. Thank you for that correction, because that would have been terrible. I'm anti-abortion.
Okay.
But I also believe that we cannot regulate God's law. And what I mean by that is you can't force people to behave Christian, because that's not going to achieve the result. In other words, if somebody's going to find God, you want them to find God, and you want them to, not because they were forced to, but because He presented themselves in their lives. And so, I think there's a line that, and I don't know exactly where it is, but I think there's a line there where, yes, my Christian view is that abortion is wrong, just is.
What line were you talking about?
Well, like I said, when it comes to the law, and the Constitution and Supreme Court versus, I had a question actually,
sure.
Mr. ADD, when it comes to overturning a Supreme Court decision, doesn't somebody first have to challenge it?
Yes.
Can that person be a Supreme Court judge?
No.
Well, then the question, is he going to seek to overturn it, is kind of redundant, isn't it?
Well, they're trying to figure out how he would rule on
They're operating under the assumption that somebody is going to challenge it.
And they will. And that's going to be throughout time,
Yeah.
They're always going to try to come back to that. And if it is overturned, then someone's going to challenge that,
Yeah. Well, I just believe the law needs to be the law. my Christian views, while they completely shape who I am as a person, can I turn that into state, federal, local law in an effort to make people behave Christian? No, that's not what we're supposed to do. Mm-hmm. I think that if you're going to make change, it has to happen by how we teach our young people, mm-hmm. To value life in general. I think that's kind of dissipated over time.
Okay. I just want to go over again. We've been talking for quite a while now. I am here with Brent, in case you're just tuning in. Again, we have the Generation Y Conservative podcast going on right now. If you're watching right now live, you're watching on Facebook on the Generation Y Conservative fan page. You can also find me on YouTube under the Generation Y Conservative, where you'll find this podcast and others in previous broadcasts in HD, audio, and video. You can also find me now on Sundays at 3 p.m. on KLRN Radio, where I go for 2 hours, so I'm keeping an eye on that, because if we happen to go over the 2 hours, I would just encourage you to go to my YouTube page or any of the other audio pages that I run, which is also on Google Play, Stitcher, and iTunes now as well, and continue the listening there, because KLRN will only broadcast 2 hours. And that's on my own doing. I actually had 3 hours originally, and I cut it down to 2 just in case I couldn't go with the subject matter for that long. But certainly I encourage you to tune in when possible on Friday nights at 9 p.m. I know a lot of people, especially in their youth, are out enjoying it. But if you have kids and you have to be at home, you have a nice glass of wine or anything like that, sit down on the couch and tune in. Otherwise, you can always listen to the audio versions, because I know we all live busy lives. Video is is not exactly something that you could always do, but if you happen to be driving along in your car or something going to work, you can always put on the audio version and listen to that as well. So what we were just talking about is 7 highlights from the Gorsuch Supreme Court hearing. We just talked about his comments in regards to overturning Roe v. Wade. His second one was in regards to originalism battles. So Gorsuch repeatedly sparred with Democratic senators about his originalist approach to the law. Originalism is a jurisprudential philosophy popularized by the late Justice Antonin Scalia.
Well, their answer is that.
So there you go. So that's where it came from, was around Scalia's time, which he served for a long time, so it still could have been decades ago. Which holds that the Constitution has a static meaning, not a living document or a fluid document that can be changed at any given time. It's what separates us from every other country, and why people escape their countries to come here, because of what we have that protects us from our own government. That's my own words. Adherence to this approach look to determine the meaning of the text of a law at the time it was written. So Feinstein, who's she is what she is, and I'll just keep that tongue bit in regards to that. The Judiciary Committee's top Democrat repeatedly locked horns with Gorsuch over originalism during the hearing's question and answer sessions. He said, it would be a mistake to think that originalism turns on the drafters of the law. This is what he said to Feinstein on Wednesday. When it comes to equal protection of the laws, for example, it matters not a whit that some of the drafters of the 14th Amendment were racists, and they were. So she wasn't satisfied with that. And at one point, Senator Patrick Leahy of Vermont indicated in his opening remarks, if qualifications were all that mattered, Leahy said, Judge Merrick Garland, who had exactly the same qualifications as Gorsuch, but was refused by the Republicans, would be sitting on the court today. That's why philosophy becomes important. I would say that that's not true. And what happened with Judge Garland is that we were in the middle of the election season. Okay, the primaries at the time, I believe. Yes, absolutely, the time of the primaries. It was Obama's last year. He had no need to run for re-election. He wasn't able to. So he was allowed to do whatever he wanted and not be held accountable by the public, of which the public, in this case, because of multiple angles that I just mentioned, should have a say into who is deciding who is going to replace one of the Supreme Court justices. Now, not who we don't vote on who is going to be the justice that replaces someone like Antonin Scalia, but we get a say into who the person is that picks those people. And I think that's a very clear distinction to make between Judge Garland and Gorsuch here, is that one of the deciding factors in this election, and I would actually be interested in looking back in history and seeing how many times this kind of circumstance came up where Supreme Court justices were lost or retired in the last year of a unreturning president, is the fact that we had an election that, by and large, a good portion of the Trump supporters that voted for him did so because of the Supreme Court. And what happened with that? I was relaying a story to Brant here the other day that, I was a never Trump person. And if you look back in my YouTube history at one of the videos I did, the video was called "I'm Voting for Trump Because the Supreme Court is That Important." And as a never Trump person, what ended up happening was I actually had some neighbors over for dinner, and we were sitting there as a family, and my phone rang, and if Billy's watching, he was the one that was calling me. And what happened was he called me, and I didn't pick up the phone because we were eating dinner, and I hit the ignore button, and immediately he called back. Well, when any friend or family member calls twice in a row immediately, something is usually typically wrong. And what ended up happening was I picked up the phone. I said, "Hey, how's it going? What can I help you with?" Very quickly, I'm just eating dinner. And he said, "Did you see the news at all today?" I said, "No." And he said, "Justice Scalia just died today." And I was in the depths of being a never Trump person. And I've never been so affected emotionally by a political event. Now, things like 9/11 are different, I think. As hearing that Justice Scalia died in the midst of one of the most heated, contentious battles that we are probably ever going to see in politics for a presidency between two people I despise, one of which I thought would destroy this country if she got in, that completely changed my mind. Going from a third-party vote or writing myself in, which a lot of people I think
a couple of people actually wrote you in, yeah.
To actually saying, this is just too damn important. We got to do this. So that, I think, is the biggest, clearest distinction between Garland and Gorsuch.
Well, look, I mean, yeah, you're right. You're looking at the potential of a nominee. Forget the fact that the debate was heated for a moment. Let's just assume it's a transition from one president to another. The fact that comes at the end of one presidency means that 4 years have gone by since that election has happened, and so that's 4 years for people to either change their mind or further support, or, so the following election, being that it was coming so soon, is going to be the most accurate depiction of what the people want now. Yeah. As opposed to assuming that they want now is the same as what they wanted 4 years ago.
Here's one other thing I would point out. I'm not just going to rip on Democrats either, because I think that one of the biggest mistakes that the Republicans made is in regards to Garland, which is they refused to hold a hearing on him. I think that denying him the position of a justice was correct. I think that they should have at least held the hearings, which was what happens. Historically, lawfully, that's what happens. The Republicans should have said, okay, we will hold the hearings, but we're probably not going to allow this to go through because of the exact reasons that I just mentioned. But I thought that it was very childish and immature of the Republicans to basically hold their candy back and say, you're not getting any of this. And, it was just childish.
Well, that goes back into the fact that it was a very contentious race, and the fact that there was a lot of bitterness and a lot of shade getting thrown.
Yeah, no kidding. Throwing shade. Is that what you said?
Shade. Yeah, throwing shade.
One of those new terms.
You're
down with the culture, I guess.
Heard it on my son's YouTube channel.
So this was in number 3 was in defense of the little guy. Gorsuch, whose calm demeanor, which is something that is just phenomenal. What it kind of reminds me of is Pence with Kane.
Yeah, well,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, not the same type. He's not. Gorsuch isn't political, but just being able to hold this cool demeanor while under fire is a trait that is to be very admired.
I think I only heard him talk twice, like the whole time.
So he said, whose calm demeanor rarely flared during the hearing, spoke in defense of the most vulnerable on Wednesday in answer to Utah Senator Orrin Hatch. Hatch is another one of those people. I'm not worried about large corporations, honestly, Senator Hatch. They've got large armies of lawyers, Gorsuch said in the Wednesday morning meeting. I'm worried about the ordinary American and sometimes the non-American. Whoa, that's a middle-of-the-road statement right there, huh? So he said, I'm distressed to hear that you think judges for the Supreme Court is an organ of a party. I know you feel that way, and it distresses me. I just don't see judging that way, and I don't see our rule of law that way. I don't see Republican judges, and I don't see Democratic cases. I see judges. And Senator, I think the rule of law in this country works. I think it works so well that to speak like that diminishes what we have, and it is for me a failure to appreciate the beauty of our system, that we resolve hundreds of thousands of cases a year, almost always unanimously as judges. So Gorsuch repeatedly stressed his independence in answers to Democrats' questions with answers such as, I'm a judge, I don't have a spokesman, I speak for myself, and I don't wear a crown, I wear a robe. So that kind of goes to the one line that you kind of liked best from him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, is if he's a judge, he's not a ruler or anything like that. And if you don't like the law that he's interpreting, change the way you do the laws, is what you said he said, right? Any other thoughts on that, Al?
Nope.
Okay.
It was a pleasure to watch that whole go through and just watch him sit there.
Number 4, the Supreme Court throws Gorsuch a curveball. Now, this is kind of getting into those cases I was talking about that they really had to have dug for. Okay, the Supreme Court ruled unanimously on Wednesday in a disabilities case that became a hot topic on day 3. So this isn't even one of his decisions, although I guess it relates to one of his decisions. Chief Justice John Roberts' ruling in Andrew F. versus Douglas County School District overturned a 10th Circuit Court of Appeals decision that allowed a school district to refuse residential educational benefits to a student with autism. Included in the case was a legal standard related to one that Gorsuch used in a previous case, which he told the committee he chose to do because he felt that he was bound by precedent. I'm going to read this whole thing because this is it gets a little dicey on details. I don't want to.
Cliff's noting that all he's really saying is a decision came up. There was already precedent to the case.
Yep.
And
he ruled on that law.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
so Minority Whip Dick Durbin brought up the Supreme Court's opinion shortly after it came out and called the High Court decision a powerful ruling and questioned why Gorsuch would have ever applied the standard. If I was wrong because I was bound by circuit precedent. This is a repeat in different words of what he's saying. This is the law that I'm interpreting. If you don't like the law, change
it's already
it.
been brought up in court. The law was interpreted,
Yes.
and it was decided.
Exactly.
I don't get to redecide, because in doing that, you're saying that the other judge was wrong. I don't think they can do that, can they?
The Supreme Court can overturn any. Yeah, the Supreme
including
Court,
another Supreme Court.
That's why a lot of cases, like the case of the Christian bakers and everything, made its way up through the courts of appeals and actually made it up to the Supreme Court because they have the authority of the land. So yeah, they have the highest decision ranking in cases. Gorsuch called the Supreme. I'm sorry. He also said, "And the Supreme Court is our boss." Gorsuch called the Supreme Court's ruling fine, and said he intended to apply the High Court's ruling in future cases. So again, he's right. I was thinking about this wrong. He's not on the Supreme Court yet, so
He was a non-Supreme Court judge that had to follow the precedent set by the Supreme Court on the. Okay,
yes. Yep.
So he didn't have a decision.
No. Let's see here.
So what were they looking for?
I don't know. So I guess Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota is a senator, Democrat senator. She said, what happened this morning was that the Supreme Court unanimously rejected, in an opinion by Chief Justice Roberts, the standard that you use to evaluate how much help kids with disabilities get in school. It wasn't your case, but it was a standard that was like the standard you used, and 9 justices disagreed with you. The Judiciary Committee's Republican members took issue with their Democratic colleagues' description of how the case was adjudicated. Texas Senator John Cornyn noted that the Supreme Court denied an appeal of Gorsuch's previous ruling invoking the similar standard relating to the one in the Andrew case. So it says Cornyn's Texas colleague, Senator Ted Cruz, also spoke out and said that Gorsuch's standard was a result of his having followed circuit court precedent. So he backed him up on that. Which isn't, it's not saying that he's not even saying that his decision was right or wrong and that how it affects the people. It's that he just ruled on the law, which is...
I mean, I don't know what they were fishing for there. If anything, maybe to find out, to catch him in saying he agreed or disagreed with something.
With kids with disabilities.
Right.
And try to hold them against
But
them.
really? I mean...
It's so ridiculous. And that's what it comes all down to. And the difference between, what I believe in regards to liberals and conservatives is that a lot of the things are decided on emotion versus just common sense. In this case here, he ruled based on the law. If a case was given to him, and you could strip out any emotional details, anyone that's connected or anything, that's what you should focus on. And I think that's exactly what he's doing. I guess that's the originalism that they're talking about, is take emotion out of the equation, and now let's look at it. Let's look at the skeleton of this beast here, and rule on that, and then you can bring the details back in, and if it makes me look like a bad guy, whatever, hey, you guys are the ones that came up with the law.
Well, look, at the end of the day, if he had done that same case, gone the other way, and gone against the Supreme Court precedent, then they would have come out now saying he's incompetent and he doesn't know how to do his job. Yeah. So that was come on.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a no-win
Number
there.
5 was the frozen trucker case. I feel like playing the Sherlock Holmes theme on this. So Gorsuch's ruling in Trans Am Trucking versus Administrative Review Board, Department of Labor, drew strong repeated criticism from Democratic senators throughout the hearings. Alphonse Maiden, a Trans Am truck driver, abandoned his trailer to seek help for its failing brakes in sub-zero temperatures and was fired by Trans Am. Gorsuch ruled that the company legally was right to do so, and that Minnesota Senator Al Franken took issue with his decision. He said, when using the plain meaning rule would create an absurd result, courts should depart from the plain meaning, Franken told Gorsuch, which Franken's an idiot. I mean, this is an SNL actor. Please tell... Okay, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm the one that just can't read or understand or comprehend something. But listen to what I say here. When using the plain meaning rule would create an absurd result, courts should depart from the plain meaning. What the hell does that mean? I think I know what he's trying to say.
Yeah, I think
he's horrible in projecting that.
He's saying if you follow the rules to the letter and what pops out on the other side is just silly, then it's time to revisit. I don't have an opinion on that because I don't know.
Isn't it jumping back to everything we've been talking about with Gorsuch in regards to him not making the law? If Franken is upset about how the input into his computer turns out a result, then you're the reason for that input. You should revisit the way you, as a senator, have made these types of laws. Maybe not Franken specifically, but...
So, wait. The person that's going against Gorsuch here is the person responsible or partially responsible for making the law in question?
No.
Oh.
No.
Okay, because that would be fantastic.
But he is a senator, which
right.
They're typically the ones that come up with these types of things. Let's see.
Was that case taken past? Did it see Supreme Court to decide if that was the frozen trucker case?
I don't know for sure. But I'll read the whole thing here because it's not that long. It says, it is absurd to say this company is in its rights to fire him because he made the choice of possibly dying from freezing to death or causing other people to die possibly by driving an unsafe vehicle. That's absurd. Now I had a career in identifying absurdity, and I know it when I see it, the former Saturday Night Live comedian said, and it makes me question your judgment. Senator Minority Leader Chuck Schumer brought Maiden along to a press conference in advance of the hearings to talk about what he viewed as the harmful consequences of Gorsuch's ruling. Gorsuch repeatedly responded to Democrats that his agitation of individual laws and statutes led him to make conclusions that he may not have personally liked, which is what I just said. It's all coming back to this. This has to be one of the most fascinating cases of a Supreme Court justice, because he is, Justice Thomas is the most conservative on the Supreme Court, okay? And when you listen to his opinion after the fact, after he delivers his opinion in the case, it is very conservative in nature. It's very constitutional in nature, and there's a bit of emotion that's involved in his opinions. Same goes for someone like Sotomayor, who, on a scale which was just done professionally as in an article on the scales of in regards to how liberal or conservative the judges or Supreme Court justices are. You have Thomas at one end, Clarence Thomas at one end. You have Justice Sotomayor at the other end, of which Chuck Schumer appointed, and then this week is saying that Justice or potential Justice Gorsuch is too conservative, and that it's too much of a political leaning to appoint him when he did Sotomayor. But in regards to this, basically, he's saying what we keep on going back to is, despite all these political leanings, if you could say that this person voted based purely on emotion out of an upbringing or anything else, Gorsuch is blowing my mind here, because he is literally just following the law and doesn't seem to. He's not saying he liked his decision. He actually said, I may not have personally have liked what the outcome was, but that is the law that I follow.
With that trucker case, it's basically like, you have a security guard, right? He works for a security company, and the rules state, and the law states, that if you walk away from your post, you are allowed to be fired. Right? So there's the guard. And over here, away from your post, there's a woman getting mugged. Right? Mm-hmm. And no one helping them. So you go and you help. Well, you've walked away from your post. If the law states that company can fire you, and they do, is anybody going to like the fact that that's the case? No. But if that's what the law says, then nobody likes it, but you can't sue, right? The
rules are in place for reasons. Right. And I would imagine these things have been thought out already.
Oh, I'm sure, but I'm saying, if in that case, following that case now, you may want to revisit the law and make exceptions. Yeah. But if they're not going to, you can't sue the company if they haven't broken the law.
Absolutely, I agree. Okay, so going on to the next one. So this is kind of interesting, because I'm going to rip on Ben Sasse a little bit, who I'm a fan of. I think Ben Sasse has a future in the president's seat. I do. I don't know about 2020. Depending on how well Trump does, there's a good opinion I heard this week that there's a possibility that Trump would walk away from the presidency, not even get impeached, but that he would just give up and say, this is a crap show and I'm walking away from it, because of the gridlock that happens. And let's get to that first, because basically,
I think his ego for that.
And that was my point. So when I go to my chiropractor, who's a big political guy, it takes me a half hour before my spine gets corrected, because all he does is talk to me about politics. And to be honest with you, I've grown so accustomed to it, I don't even bring up politics in hopes that he can fix my back that's aching while I'm sitting there listening to him. And instead he goes off on these rants, which are fantastic, because we actually learn quite a bit from each other. But he was saying that with this Republican health care bill that's going on right now, he believes that the reason why it's being rushed through so fast is so that it does fail on the votes. Even though it was pushed off again today for the second day in a row. He believes that the Republicans and Democrats are trying to set an example of Trump not being able to get anything done and be a leader, because both parties want to project this notion that you have to be a politician in order to run for president. That it's a dangerous precedent to set in either party to allow someone outside of the political system. He was mayor or governor.
All right. Well,
before he ran for president, and I always make that argument with people in California, but which doesn't take much to be considered a conservative out there. But in this case, he's saying that if this doesn't go through, everything else is going to fall apart, especially the budget in regards to the military budget, because a lot of things are tied to the savings associated with the healthcare bill. And what would end up happening is the savings from that in regards to the budget increase for the military, which those two are directly associated, would fall apart as well. And you could be looking at a situation where he thinks either this December or next December, Trump would just say, you know what, Pence loves this stuff. He lives politics. He's a politician. And nothing can get done. I can't work with either of these parties. They don't want to work together. They don't want to work with me. And it's not doing any good for anyone. I'm just going to walk away from this and go back to my businesses where I am successful. I said the exact same thing that you did, which is Trump has so much of an ego. He wouldn't allow for a failure or stepping down to show up on a resume.
I think that the quick repeal, was something that they promised, and it's something they needed to work towards. But there's such a simple answer here, at least in my mind, that should have taken place and addressed before we get to this point. Simply put the vote to take away any penalties and a requirement for people to buy the Affordable Care Act before repealing it. Take away the only thing that is making the Affordable Care Act, as crappy as it is, unconstitutional, right? Nobody would, right before tax season, really? Yeah. Go and take away the fine. Take away the penalties. Tell people you are no longer required by law to buy this thing if you don't want it, right? That would have bought him some favor. That would have bought him some time. And they haven't. And that doesn't need... that could have been done on day one.
Yeah, but the thing I'm going to disagree with you on that is that the Obamacare, or the Affordable Health Care Act...
I know it requires that to work.
Yeah, it's a house of cards.
But my point is...
You take that out and the whole thing collapses. Because it's collapsing anyway. I totally get what you're saying.
Okay.
But
if they're going to do if they were going to push this through, regardless, take away the unconstitutional, declare it unconstitutional. It already is, right? But have it decided as unconstitutional, put it to a vote, remove it, right? Now what choice do they have but to make this thing work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to do something. And come
when the deck of cards is laying on the ground in a pile, now they don't have... right now, as it sits with them not doing that, they've got it still there, right? It's a leg to stand on. Kick the leg out.
Yeah. Okay, so number 6 was Ben Sass's sass, is what it was labeled. So Nebraska Senator Ben Sass routinely injected humor into the Marathon Supreme Court nomination hearing. When Sass first questioned the judge Tuesday, he asked Gorsuch about his SCOTUS bladder. He said, "My wife also sent me a text a little bit ago and said, and I'm sure she didn't expect me to read it, but, quote, how in the world is Gorsuch able to go so many hours at a time without peeing?" Sass asked Tuesday as the room erupted in laughter. "I won't make you answer." He added, "The SCOTUS bladder is something the whole country stands in awe of." And I'll get to the next comment. I think one thing that is to be noted is Gorsuch actually just broke down laughing at this. There is another comment here. Here's where I take issue with this. Sass is a funny guy. He's one of the most grounded people, and I've seen liberals post things that he has said because he's so relatable, right? That's why I believe that Sass has a future as president. I think it would be 2024, I think, is going to be his year. If not 2020, if Trump walks away. I think there's a good opportunity for him to enter the race. But if there's one issue that I really take in regards to politics is that when you see these... Okay, best example. Obama versus Hillary in the 2008 election, right? It was so apparent even to people on the left that the media was throwing softball questions to Obama to help him out and then hitting her hard with the questions. Mm-hmm. It was disgusting. It was really disgusting. And you see that in the media all the time. As you see any of these Democrats, senators and congressmen go up into any interview situation, and it's a tough topic that they're being interviewed on, and all that's lobbed at them are these, here you go questions. Here you go, answer this, and you're going to look good. You're going to make the party look good, in essence, and we're helping you out. We're the media. We're your lapdog, so you help us, we help you, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Republicans come on, let's hit them with everything and throw in some other crap that doesn't relate to this and make them look like a bunch of a-holes. You know what I mean?
Right.
But, so that's kind of what I take issue with this is, it's almost like the right keeps on going in the direction of the left and playing these softball games and everything, and Sass is throwing in this funny humor, but he's wasting time. I mean, this guy's sitting there for 11 hours, and I guess you could also say in argument,
he's been sitting there for 11 hours.
He's sitting there for 11 hours. Serious question, but I just don't like wasting the American taxpayers' time and or money with stuff like this. But he is funny. Okay, I will give him that. The other comment that he made, which I think was actually even funnier, on Wednesday, Sass similarly seized the chance to poke fun at Gorsuch's expense. When the Nebraskan senator asked Gorsuch about the Declaration of Independence, the Coloradan judge began to wax poetic about John Hancock. He said, "That's why John Hancock is now synonymous with his signature," Gorsuch said. "No one remembers who John Hancock was, but they know that's his signature because he wrote his name so big and boldly." "You just said bigly," Sass said, and the room laughed. "And I just won $5. And Gorsuch replied, "You embarrassed me in front of my nephew, and he loves it." Gorsuch replied, "He's the one that's paying me the $5," Sass answered. So I thought that was pretty funny. And again, I'm conflicted on how these jokes go over and the placement of them, but it was pretty funny with that little interruption of time there as well. Okay, so 7, it says, last but not least, long after Grassley left Tuesday's hearing to meet his 9 p.m. bedtime, Louisiana Senator John Kennedy got his first crack at questioning Gorsuch. Kennedy asked about what kind of a student former President Barack Obama was at Harvard Law School, where the former president's tenure overlapped with the Supreme Court nominee. Gorsuch said he knew him not well. Kennedy then jokingly asked whether the Democratic president was a sort of student who sat in the front and always raised his hand. No, actually, he was the student that was sitting in the back smoking a joint in marijuana and talking about going to be a community organizer. But whatever, to each his own. "I don't know if you're a drinking man, but you may want to have a cocktail tonight and relax," Kennedy said. "I'm done. Just don't drink vodka. Stay away from vodka." "Senator, I'm going to hit the hay," Gorsuch replied. "Thank you very..." And he was cut off, and Kennedy said, "You've never been to Russia, have you? I meant to ask that. Strike that. In regards to all the connections with Russia and everything. So, Gorsuch, any other final thoughts on him and how things are going, what you expect to happen?
I don't know what I expect to happen. I think he'll be nominated. I do,
so too.
Because I think that if the Republicans and Democrats are trying to use any tool to slap President Trump on the wrist, it is the health care bill. I don't think they're coming at it from all angles. I think that would be far, far too transparent. I think it would be counterproductive. But yeah, I think he's going to be nominated. I just think they're going to put him through the ringer before that happens.
So, I was listening to a professional in regards to the Supreme Court and what happens there. And they were talking about how Gorsuch shouldn't... Well, it is a priority right now, right? But they were saying that they expect within the next 10 months for another justice to be off the bench. That being, they expect Robert to retire. Or Justice Roberts. Because they want him to go out. Now, Roberts is the dissenting vote on Obamacare, by the way. He was, or not dissenting, but he was one that voted with the Democratic way and actually passed it through. But they expect him to retire during a Republican's term, and we're in that time frame, and that would allow us to appoint another justice that may be better suited to the seat. So we'll be going through this again probably within the next year. But that also doesn't take into account the other justices that may run into health issues. Now, I'm sorry.
They're all there's a couple teetering on when you look at the average life expectancy for
Ginsburg is first of all, mad respect for Ginsburg. You know, it seems like her and Justice Scalia were really good friends. They went to like operas and
she doesn't seem like she knows where she is.
Yeah,
she doesn't seem together.
Sometimes I wonder if I saw a reflection of like fishing line moving her hands up and down, and someone just is like controlling her yet there because she's not there. She
didn't seem all there.
But you know, she is frail. She is a frail old woman, and you know, I pray for the life of everyone, including Ginsburg. But she is up there. You know what I mean? And 4 years is 4 years.
It's like watching Tales from the Crypt. She does not look long for this world.
Oh, no, you're talking about Nancy Pelosi.
No. Well, all right.
No, but I think it's an interesting angle because there's a lot this is a very interesting time that you and I are living through, and everyone at this time is living through, because there's just so many big things happening. I mean, this election, you know, it's kind of like the election of Obama. We didn't like him, but you had to take a second to admire the fact that we did make history in that moment.
Oh, sure.
You know what I mean? And that's why I thought for sure Hillary was going to win this election, was just because of the people voting for her to have the first female president, which scares the living hell out of me because of the type of people that think that that's the best qualification, because for crying out loud, it's one of her only qualifications.
it was
up there.
It's neat.
Oh my word! I mean, that woman's horrible. By the way, speaking of Clinton, did you know that Chelsea Clinton just won a Lifetime Achievement Award?
No, she didn't.
What was it?
No, it was the reporter got it way wrong.
Okay, good.
She won. It was from the Lifetime. It was from a group. It wasn't the Lifetime Achievement Award.
Okay, what was it in regards to?
Shoot, I hope this works. Hold on. I just read this earlier today.
Okay.
But the reporter had it all wrong.
While you're talking about that, I'm going to keep on going on.
Got it.
You know, we're living in this time where we elected someone like Trump. Now, whether you like him or you don't like him, you hate him, it's a pretty big thing to get in someone that's outside of the party system. You know, now liberals are going to try to tie us to him as much as possible because he ran on the Republican ticket. But you also had this fact that over the last couple of elections, third parties like the Libertarian Party, the Green Party, and even socialists like Bernie Sanders, who I'm surprised didn't run on his own ticket under a socialist ticket, are coming up to the forefront and actually making a big impact and dent on what we have going on in the political system right now. You know, there was a time I actually have a newspaper, actual newspaper clipping of an election back in the 30s where you actually, I don't know if it was basically you marked off who you wanted to vote for and then you mailed it in, but there was the Communist Party, the Labor Party, Socialist Party, Jobless Party was one on that. You have the Republicans, the Democrats, the Liberals. I don't know if Progressives.
Green Party.
Green Party wasn't on that one, but at one point in time it did show up. You know, obviously the Whigs at way back and everything. But we're going back to a time where I think it's a reflection of our society that we are going away from this two-party system because people are realizing just how full of crap both sides of the aisle are. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So you seem to have found what we were looking for.
Yes. Variety magazine, in partnership with Lifetime, will hand out the Impact Honorees Award during its Women in Power luncheon. So it was from Variety and Lifetime magazine.
Oh, magazine.
Not a Lifetime Achievement Award. So that was just like, what was fake news?
Hey, I'm glad you caught me. I don't want to spread that kind of fake news.
This story originally stated Chelsea Clinton was to receive a Lifetime Achievement Award.
It's right there at the top.
No, it's right here.
It says Clinton is being honored for her work with Alliance for a Healthier Generation, which empowers kids to develop lifelong healthy habits. And what does yours say?
Right. Editor's note, the story originally stated Chelsea Clinton was to receive a Lifetime Achievement Award. It has been corrected to state that Clinton will receive an Impact Award from Variety in partnership with Lifetime. A little bit of a difference there.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad he corrected me. Like I said, I mean, it's important because there's a lot of these
227 it got corrected. It was just this afternoon.
Oh, wow. It's important because there's a lot of these stories that don't go corrected out there. And when they do get corrected, people don't correct themselves on social media with what they're saying. So I really hope that...
Because it's embarrassing, that's all. People get embarrassed that they believe something without researching it.
I think it's more than that, though. I think it's that, and I've been saying this over and over again for the past couple months, that people on both sides, there's guilty parties, but I think the left as a whole right now, with the way that they're acting in regards to the Trump election, believe that the agenda is more important than the truth.
Yeah.
And so they won't update their stories because it doesn't fit the agenda. It makes them either embarrassed that they were wrong, or it also doesn't paint...
It still achieves the desired result that they wanted.
Yep.
Truth or
to
not.
enrage people and get them to think
Well,
a
I mean,
certain
even
way.
if Chelsea did win the Lifetime Achievement Award, I mean, that'll never trump the fact that Obama won the Nobel Peace Prize. So
before he was even
in his first year.
Yeah. That's the thing. And that's what drove me nuts.
And they even came back and said they wish they hadn't.
Yes, they just did that within the last year, didn't they?
Yeah, because they said that it was supposed to inspire him, and he didn't behave inspired.
Do you know that when you look at the statistics of what presidents have deported the most of the illegal immigrants...
Oh, Obama. My wife has told
far.
me that when she was in Nicaragua, literally Obama, there would be plane loads of immigrants being deported.
Wow.
That's coming from the source,
Yeah.
No, Obama deported more than any other president in my lifetime.
Yes. Yeah.
But he didn't make it a social,
He didn't make it public, and the media chose to ignore it.
Well, they ignored every bad thing he did for 8 years.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're talking about the impact of this time that we're living in, though, because I think that this Scalia situation is pretty unique. I believe it has happened in the past, but for it to happen under the types of perfect storm circumstances that we're facing today, I think is unheard of. And I think it's just astounding to watch this stuff unfold around us in our generation and watch it just explode. It's just
I mean,
unbelievable.
I wouldn't say I disagree because I don't. I would say that our situation, and as much of an impact as it has, and as unique as it is, I don't think it's as unheard of as we think, because I think anytime a new generation, especially a large generation, starts to be old enough that it is, starting to affect everyday life. It's starting to affect policies. It's starting to, and you're seeing millennials and Generation X at that age, right? And I would imagine if you talk to, people that were around when the baby boomers first, became 30, first hit their, late 20s to mid 30s, I would imagine they'd say it was pretty. I mean, what would the time era for that have been?
So you're talking about the cyclical nature of how politics reacts with the society,
right? As the views of different generations.
Yeah, we had the hippie generation to the Reagan Revolution, to the Clinton era, to the Bush era,
right,
to the Obama era, to completely swinging in the other direction to Trump. I mean, it is very cyclical.
And I would imagine that the discussions had in those moments was probably pretty similar. You have one generation that doesn't mirror the views of the prior generation, and they're at odds with one another.
Yeah. Do you think it has a lot to do with kids rebelling against their parents' generation?
No.
No? See, I look at the 60s and 70s into the Reagan Revolution. Basically.
Well, I'm not speaking to that. I mean, today, and when I'm thinking of, I'm thinking, is the snowflake movement as a result of rebelliousness? And no. Okay. I don't think it is. Is that a factor?
Because millennials rely on their parents for everything.
Right. And yeah. And no, I think that the problem began with the parents, not the children.
Yep.
And so I think they're just a bad product of poor decision making. Yeah. Despite best intentions, if that's what it was,
I'll tell you what. Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's we are setting up some really nasty things. Our generation is going to, there's going to be these rebels that stand out. I don't mean rebels in a bad way, like a rebellion type thing, but the free thinkers that don't. Here's what I always say: when you go to college now, the way that these kids are educated is that they all have to take these tests, and you're basically putting out a cookie cutter sheet of all these same students that have the same ideology. I've witnessed people that I went to high school with come out of college as extreme feminists, right? And it's a product of what they learned in that college setting. But you're going to have these rebellious free thinkers that are going to change this society. It's just removing yourself from the cookie sheet, I think. You know what I mean? I
think, you go back far enough, and the not free thinkers, the more liberal ideology was the rebel.
Exactly.
And we're at a point now where if you base your views on solid facts and not your emotions and go against the status quo in any way, now the conservative is the rebel. I think that in the college, college level,
appealing.
Yeah,
it will be appealing to people.
Yeah,
to peel themselves away from a norm. Okay, so I just want to make something very clear. This is the end of the broadcast for KLRN Radio. If you are interested in listening to our main topic, which is Tomi Lahren and her suspension at theBlaze, what I would encourage you to do is find me on my Facebook page, The Generation Y Conservative. You can also find me on YouTube, The Generation Y Conservative, which you'll see the HD broadcast of this and finish off with the last topic here. You can also find me on Google Play and Stitcher. But I believe that iTunes is directly connected with KLRN now, so you won't be able to get the full broadcast on that. So please do tune over to one of those and finish off this broadcast. I encourage you to do that and share. And this is going to be an interesting conversation. So thank you guys for tuning in tonight. Have a great night, and God bless America.